to join and ask questions. So tonight we have two great presenters. I would start with Khun from Zipmex, the CEO of Zipmex. If you're in Thailand, I'm sure you have heard of it, or you're already a client of this newly and exciting crypto exchange. And we are going to talk with Khun about the general situation and basically how institutions are getting in the market. And on the second part, we have Yimwilai from Merkle Science. If some of you don't know these great companies, it's actually someone who is going to be very important with a lot of digital asset businesses, because is actually providing some tools for regulations and to make sure that if you have a digital asset business, you will be compliant with the regulation. So two of them are going to have a short presentation. Then after, we're going to go to the Q&A. So don't be shy, ask some questions on the chat. I will be monitoring it, and let's go for it. So Khun, the floor is yours, and let me know if you need anything.
Okay.
Okay.
Apparently, I have some slides as well. Is that correct?
You do? You want me to share them?
Okay, I'll tell you what. Thank you everyone for attending. Thank you, Maxime, for hosting this. So sad that we can't do a physical meetup. It's always a lot better to talk crypto and blockchain face to face, and you can see people's happiness and sadness when you're together. But I think everyone's happy at the moment with the market doing very well. So I'm the CEO and co-founder of Zipmex Thailand. I also look after the Zipmex Asia, which is the headquarters in Singapore. We are currently in 4 markets, which is in Thailand, Singapore, Indonesia, and Australia. We wanted to start in Thailand first, but because getting in Thailand took us some time, 18 months to be exact. During that time, we had to explore other markets as well. And we did quite well in Indonesia, and we were number 2 against Indodax, which is an Indonesian exchange. And then we got approved in Thailand, and we started operating on around the 20th of July. In the meantime as well, like MAS of Singapore is going to be issuing out licenses very soon. We've got fast track. Somebody stepped ahead of us in our application, which was DBS. So that makes sense. Singaporean supporting their own banks, but that's part of the talk I'll be talking about today, is that you were beginning to see this institution like adoption happening. So we opened in Thailand. And I'll specifically talk about Thai market because I think most of the audience and everyone here is based in Thailand, or they understand the Thai market as well. We've definitely seen a huge growth, and part of being in this industry at the moment is that there are not a lot of players out there. And when I was working in securities brokerage, there's about 45 brokerages in Thailand alone. So they're all fighting for the same piece of pie that is not growing. But for digital assets, it's a growing, it's always growing. And it's always good to have competition come in. And I believe there will be more exchanges and OTC dealers and brokerages coming into digital assets space. We've recently seen last week that Audit has opened Upbit Thailand, and so we're beginning to have more competition. But competition is actually very good, because in the end, the person who benefits the most is the customer, because and the business as well will always try to find a way to improve their products and their experiences, and they'll always try to find a way to make things more efficient, more effective, in order to get customers onto their platform. And this competitive nature, in the end, the customers will win out. And of course, at the same time, the most effective and efficient platform as well will also be the market leader. So I think what a lot of people have been part of the subject matter at hand today at the meetup is to talk about institutional adoption, right, Maxime? So let's if you have some slides.
Yeah, can you share them?
Yeah, sure. Do you want me to share them, or it's you?
Yeah, can you do it? Then you can manage it with the share screens.
Okay.
Unless you don't have it, and I can share them for you, but things
I
gonna
do
be
have
easy.
it. I do have it. Yeah.
No worries.
So yeah, we're beginning to see like, back when it was 4 years ago, there wasn't a lot of oh, I'm not allowed to share, Maxine.
Okay.
You
Let me see.
it in Zoom insulted me, said like I don't have the right to
Yeah,
share this.
and make you a
Yeah.
co-host, and yeah, you should be
I feel
able to
very
share.
sad. Yeah. All right, why don't you share it, and then I'll just let you know. But
Okay.
4 years ago, it was really a retail-driven market. Is it the one? Okay, that's fine. Just leave it like this. So it was a very retail-driven market 4 years ago, and every little things, if you guys were in the market like 4 years ago, could cause a drop in the price of Bitcoin. For example, China is going to ban Bitcoin, or they're not banning anymore. SEC is not approving ETFs. It's, if you really think about it, like, okay, SEC not approving ETF is not going to make a difference really in the market now. It's not gonna cause such a huge drop in price. Or if suddenly say China is not gonna be adopting Bitcoin anymore and they think it's illegal, it's not gonna be affecting it that much, simply because we've been seeing a lot of adoption in other areas as well, and one of them has mainly come from institutional adoption. So there's a reason for that. So if you go to slide 4, I just want to talk about the total global credit market debt chart at the moment. Now, since if you see, like, since the 1950s until now, there is a lot of USD being printed into the world economy. And especially since Bretton Woods in 1971, if I believe, since the USD went off the gold standard, the Federal Reserve didn't have gold as a reserve anymore. And it's, the USD is just now backed by the government, essentially. And so there's been this huge debt super cycle that has been happening, where money has just been injected into the economy to grow. Now it's part of the Keynesian school of economics, where you inject more money to increase government spending, put money into people's hands so they consume more, they invest more, and so forth, and drive all this. But at the same time, it devalues the currency. So, and you can see that the amount of dollars printed is kind of correlated with GDP as well, because GDP, made of consumption, investment, government spending, import and export, all those need money in people's hands or in the government's hands, and therefore the economy has grown up, which coincides with the amount of money which is being printed. So if you go to slide 5, you can see that before, people used to get a lot of like returns on their savings, especially on US dollars. If you, especially in Indonesia, like in the market that Zipmex is in Thailand as well, I believe 30 years ago, if you had Thai baht in a bank, you would get 10% interest rate just on your savings. And this would even be a flexible deposit account, because there wasn't that much like debt to go around. But if you see in the chart, since the 1990s, like the bond yields have decreased exponentially. And I guess if you are like 50 and 60-year-olds, like, and if people used to give bonds to your children, oh, here's a treasury bond. No one does that. No one wants bonds, like, because the return on them it's so bad, and inflation about 3 to 4% a year. It's not even worth it if you're getting a treasury bond which is going to yield you what, 1% a year. Like your currency is going to be devalued. But if you give Bitcoin to your nephew, your cousin, they're going to be more happy, because they see that this might appreciate in value. So you're beginning to see, like, this is part of the reason as well why Michael Saylor of MicroStrategy decided to put his cash reserves in Bitcoin, because he just believed that his cash reserves was just getting devalued every day, and there's no growth from it, and he just believed that the company's asset is not being utilized, and it's always just losing money. That's why he bought Bitcoin, and which started to spark this sort of acceptance of Bitcoin as an appreciative store of value. Rather than holding USD or cash, why don't you hold an asset that at least can appreciate in value? And I mean, of course, by then, once he started, to put his cash reserves into Bitcoin, the price started, going up, because now you're beginning to see acceptance from the market. So with the next slide, you can, hello? Yeah, okay. Yeah, I just wanted to highlight this as well, that everyone's, in every national economy in the world, your fiat currency is being devalued every single year, because of the printing of money, and makes the the fiat amount, the cash that you have in your pocket, worth less and less and less. It used to be that do I have to admit people because I'm the host now?
No, don't worry, I'm doing it.
Okay.
So you can go ahead.
Okay, so essentially, like, this devaluation, and back then, I would say about 20 years ago, a bowl of noodle in Bangkok cost 10 baht. Now it costs 45 baht. So if you had saved 10 baht, back in the day, if you in 20 years ago, if you were a millionaire, you would be considered, oh, you're very rich. But now if you're a millionaire, it's kind of okay. Like it's a lot different. And because of this reduced purchasing power, your fiat currency is becoming less and less. And this is exactly what MicroStrategy did, is that to invest into an appreciating asset, which they believe it's a much better store of value than cash. So with the next slide, is and then you're beginning to see institutional adoptions. I think everyone knows it. Oh, sorry. Yeah, actually, this is quite a good point. So because of quantitative easing, it's basically injecting money into the economy. For the past 10 years, 20 years since the 10 years since the financial crisis of 2009, 2010, $10 trillion has been printed, like, into the economy. If you look at the chart, around 2010, there was about $10 trillion in circulation. Let's say they call it circulating supply. But now there's now 19 trillion. I took this today. This is pretty updated. And since COVID, that happened in early 2020, an additional $3 trillion has been printed into the economy. And Joe Biden is now going to be presenting a bill in front of Congress to print an additional $2 to $3 trillion into the economy. So you're just beginning to see, like, all this cash, all this capital, which as a result causes inflation, which means your fiat currency is getting devalued. Where is that money going to go? If all your cash is getting devalued, it has to go somewhere. No one wants to lose money on their investments or their savings. It has to go somewhere. That's why we saw gold reach all-time high. Like, it has reached all-time high, I think, around March of last year, and because money was moving into gold. And then at the same time, all the tech stocks started to just go crazy, and you saw Tesla stock, just keep on going up, Zoom stock, Netflix stocks, recently GameStop as well. It's just been, going up like crazy, because there needs to be a fund flow, capital flow of money to somewhere. If it's not stocks, it's probably bonds, but bonds doesn't produce really high yields. And then you have Bitcoin. So you have Bitcoin as a, like, kind of a store of value, which is an appreciative asset. And that's why you're beginning to see these companies put their cash reserves into Bitcoin rather than staying in cash. So if you go to slide 9, please. And then these are the, yeah, that's why I talked about this already. So you're beginning to see institutional adoption. So I think everyone knows that every single week, Grayscale is just buying more Bitcoin. Grayscale Investment Trust is essentially an easy way for people to get exposure into Bitcoin. They buy it's like an index fund, really. People don't actually buy the actual Bitcoin, but they buy exposure to it. So they get exposure to Bitcoin. And Grayscale buys this constantly. They released a report very recently. I believe it was only Friday, like Thursday, Friday, that they released that. If you're interested in institutional adoption and these data and metrics, you should check out that report, and you can start to see that there has been a lot of purchasing of Bitcoin by Grayscale. And then you had MicroStrategy of Michael Saylor buying it. They've just bought an additional, I think, 10 million US dollars. MicroStrategy borrowed money to buy Bitcoin. If that's not institutional adoption, I don't know what is.
It's not supposed to be the way.
It's not supposed to be the way, you're not, but you're getting like a firm like this doing margin trading, margin investment. They're borrowing to buy more Bitcoin. It really shows belief. And you got PayPal coming in, launching crypto payments as part of that platform, and which has provided this network effect that there's now an acceptance to this. Square as well. Square has done the same strategy as MicroStrategy. They bought Bitcoin as well as part of their cash reserves. And then DBS as a bank. DBS, one of the oldest banks in Singapore, has now entered into this space. And I can also say that for Thailand, there are also banks that have looked into this. We've been in discussion with them, and they are interested to enter into this space. 4 years ago, this was impossible. I would just have balked at the fact that PayPal, DBS, these household names are entering into this space.
And sorry to cut you, but just a question regarding the banks. Are they looking at it for their clients or for their own books? In Thailand?
Both.
Okay.
But the problem with banks at the moment is that they don't understand crypto and blockchain and custodianship, all these sort of things, and KYT, like what Merkle Science is doing. So it's going to be a bit of a learning curve for them. And I don't know what the strategy is, whether it be an acquisition of an existing business or whether it'll be completely doing it from the ground up. But my bet would be it will be joining with an existing company or acquiring, simply because cryptocurrency and digital assets move so fast that if you just start from the ground up, everything might be already ahead. So, you need time to catch up. That's the other slides we don't need to go through, Maxime. But yeah, maybe slide number 14. So, part of the reason as well as we're also seeing institutional adoption, which wasn't here 4 years ago, was that in the beginning, not many people understood it. So you need some sort of understanding as well. Bitcoin was used to buy illegal products and illegal goods, right? Back in the days of the Silk Road and Ross Ulbricht and all that. But it has moved towards being a medium of exchange for illegal transactions, towards being an investment class. So it's now becoming an asset class of its own. And it's being legally accepted in many countries. Japan accepts it as a currency. Indonesia accepts it as a commodity, which is a bit strange. Thailand accepts it as a security. So, different jurisdictions around the world are accepting it in one way or another. And that's why we're beginning to get regulation coming in. 4 years ago, there were no regulation, at all. And we're beginning to see regulation, and Thailand being one of the first countries in Asia Pacific to actually have a statute, which is a law to actually regulate this industry and the businesses operating in it, which Zipmex is licensed and regulated by the SEC. And then we're beginning to see all these products coming out, all these DeFi products and all these staking mechanism, and this infrastructure being built in. You have the Atato, who is like the consultant advisor for blockchain development. You've got Merkle Science, who's blockchain analytics and doing KYC, know your transaction, so you can trace transactions that's happening on the blockchain. And then with custody, you're beginning. So Zipmex, we use BitGo, and BitGo is, I think they're one of the largest, probably the largest custody for digital assets. They have about $20 billion of assets under management, and their technology and the assets there is insured by Lloyd's Bank of England. So just the fact that Lloyd's Bank insures BitGo goes to show that there is some acceptance there. And so what we're really heading towards now is market acceptance. So you're beginning acceptance, by sort of the media personalities, the visionaries, these large companies coming in. But all of this has happened in the space of, I would say, 4 years, 3 to 4 years, and we've moved quite fast. And so I'm very excited to see what happens next. But are we heading towards mass adoption? I do not know whether it will be in a form of electronic currency or digital currency and so forth, or it will be an investment asset class of its own. That still remains to be seen, because we're beginning to see, like, people don't accepting, and no one really use Bitcoin as a medium of exchange. They use it as an asset class to invest and so forth. So what we've been seeing a bit more, especially in Thailand, is that it's considered like a security. It has a upside gain, it has downside risk. It there's capital gain involved. So it functions and works pretty much like a security. And that is especially for Thailand. So that is where we're heading. Digital assets is an asset class of its own. So to sum up, we are seeing solid regulation. The infrastructure is there. There's a reason why Square and MicroStrategy has now bought, because there is now an infrastructure for them to buy. There is a custodian for them. Back then, if you were to buy, who's going to hold your Bitcoin? You're going to get the CEO to put it into a hardware wallet and he walks around with it. That's not scalable, and it's not very safe, especially how you can explain to the shareholders. But now there's this infrastructure in place, there's regulation in place. And I do believe this is the platform and for much more additional growth in the digital assets market, and possibly for Bitcoin to become, its self-renowned, name of the digital gold, and perhaps start to take that market share from physical gold itself. Yeah.
All right. Thanks a lot, Khun Bank, and I think this is the last one, right? And,
thank you. Yeah.
Thanks. Very explanatory, and especially I think it's the big part is about understanding what's going on with the printing of money, especially in the US and everywhere in the world. And just before we go to Jan, I just have a couple of questions regarding your presentation. There was a last announcement from the SCT last week about launching potentially their digital asset trading platform for digital asset, but not cryptocurrencies. And what do you think about it? And wanted to have your views on it.
My view?
Yeah, as an exchange. And
well, I can tell you right now that it's not going to be anytime soon.
Sure.
Okay. Yeah, it's not going to be anytime soon, because there is still an issue of custody, like who's going to be taking control of the digital asset part. Also, when you do a security token, an asset-backed token, you need someone to hold the physical asset too. So who take care of that? And who translates the physical asset to the digital asset? That's why you have this Oracle problem with what Chainlink and Band Protocol is trying to fix. So it's those are things that they still need to work through. And at the same time, you're also beginning to see like problems. SCT. Remember, SCT is an exchange. They've never accepted customers before. They've never done KYC, like ever. They're just a marketplace. But the brokerage companies, the security companies, they're the ones that do KYC. So they have to completely understand this whole new like business in terms of operations, how to accept new customers, what's the KYC, how to do, AML. They've never had to do that like before.
Sure.
And then the
I
last
think
thing
it's
is products as well, Maxime. I don't know any asset-backed tokens or security tokens that is out there to be ready to be,
that's
listed. Yeah, yet.
You're right, and because there is none so far in Thailand, and I think this is the link they wanted to do between the ICO portals issuing digital assets and then the ACT becoming potentially the secondary market for those tokens, which don't exist today because we didn't have any ICO so far. And
exactly.
There is a question from Ben Martin. I was going to ask the same. Basically, who will be or who is the micro strategy of Thailand? Do you see any companies approaching you and saying, "Okay, I want to put a part of my cash reserves in Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrencies"? Do you see that coming? Do you see that already with some Thai companies?
Yes, definitely. We've had as much as like $1 million, like to be that people bought Bitcoin with us and then just leaving it with us, institutions as well. Okay. So we've had many customers coming in like now, and for Thai companies to buy like $1 million worth of Bitcoin is quite like forward thinking of them. We're definitely going to see more growth and traction into this as well, and yeah, we are definitely already seeing institutions coming in.
Okay, and I know that you can't reveal the name, but is it more like tech companies or large or small ones? Can you just give a hint?
Like all of them, like even small companies, even large companies that's not even tech or finance. Maybe in something as insurance companies, like it's we are beginning to like see those coming in.
Okay, that's definitely encouraging, and the nice things that it's not only US, but even now that we are seeing in Thailand, it's encouraging. But Ben, thank you so much for the presentation. We'll go back to the Q&A after that. I have several questions to ask you again, but let's go to Ian first. And I think it's a good transition because we had the exchange view and I would say the global macro view, and what we could take off out of it is that regulation is becoming more and more important, and it's not like 3 or 4 years ago when we were just few people in a bar in Bangkok discussing blockchain. Now we are talking about banks, the Bank of Thailand, the Stock Exchange of Thailand, doing some exploration and projects. So Ian, I will let you start and present Merkle Science and what you are seeing in Singapore as well for institutions.
Thank you, Maxine. And thank you, Bank. I know I wholeheartedly agree with you. Definitely, we're seeing a new wave of adoption coming from both the retail and the institution side, driven by many different factors, regulations, not the least of them. So allow me to just go ahead and share my screen. And I just have a short presentation to share for everyone. So for those of you who don't know me or Merkle Science, right? It's nice to meet you. Merkle Science is what we call a blockchain analytics company, right? Which means that we monitor and analyze blockchain data for a variety of different purposes, but mainly for compliance. Now, just to give you guys a little bit of background about myself, I'm currently I'm part of the founding team at Merkle Science, where my role is as VP of Business Development. So based here in Singapore, I handle most of the Asia region. But prior to joining Merkle Science, I was actually a capital markets lawyer, right? So advising companies on the likes of your listing, M&As, basically dealing with regulations in and out. So I know firsthand, the challenges that companies have when it comes to regulation. And I can tell you, the crypto regulations that have been introduced are not easy to comply, right? But before I talk a little bit more about what we do, just a little bit more about the company itself. So although I'm based here in Singapore, which is our headquarters, we do have offices in Bangalore and in London, right? And the team, brings with it experience from the likes of traditional companies like PayPal, as well as, crypto companies like Luno, where our CEO actually was in charge of Luno's expansion across Asia, right? But going back to what we do. So as I said, Merkle Science is a blockchain analytics company, which means that we monitor blockchain data, right, for compliance reasons, which means that it's really helping our clients detect and prevent the illegal use of cryptocurrencies, or in other words, helping them, prevent the illegal use of cryptocurrencies relating to crypto crime, right? And so some of you might be thinking, well, what is crypto crime, right? So before I start talking about the solutions, I do want to, talk a little bit about what is crypto crime. So, crypto has been around for a long time, right? For those of you OG players, you might have, been in this industry for more than a decade, but that's exactly how old crypto is. Bitcoin has been around for more than 10 years. But although it's been around for more than 10 years, I think honestly, most people only probably started really paying attention to it in 2016 and 17 when the market went crazy, right? But Bitcoin has been around for a long time, and crypto has been around for a long time. And in the early days, before the retail, before the institutions all came in, crypto was actually used quite prevalently by criminals for all kinds of illicit purposes. And it was because of that, because crypto had this bad history behind it, that I think it probably took a while for regulators to become comfortable with it, right? To give you guys an idea of some of the crypto crime that's taken place, not just in the past, but what's happening today, right? One of the most common type of crime relating to crypto that we see are your typical scams, right? Your Ponzi schemes. In fact, there's a number of different ICO projects which have been indicted for actually, promoting a Ponzi scheme. And one of the most famous ones would be the OneCoin scandal. All right. Aside from this, we've also seen a lot of exchange hacks, right? For those of you in the crypto space, if you're following CoinDesk and all that, you probably see every other week, we read about a crypto company being hacked. And these hacks can take place not because the company's technical infrastructure gets hacked, but oftentimes we also see these exchanges being hacked through social engineering attacks, right? Where the employees perhaps get manipulated into revealing or downloading ransomware. Aside from that, we also see, cryptocurrencies being used prevalently on the dark web, where studies have estimated that more than 60% of dark web transactions involve crypto. So anything from the likes of buying and selling of weapons, narcotics, human trafficking, to violent and illegal content, right? And this gets even worse because not only do criminals use cryptocurrency as a means of payment, we're also starting to see, terrorist organizations start using crypto as a means of fundraising, right? We crypto maximalists always talk about how cryptocurrency is borderless, it facilitates easy transactions, and that's all true. But at the same time, I think we also got to be recognized that these same benefits, these same advantages of using crypto also make them, right, useful for illegal purposes. We see crypto being used for ransomware and, even all the way down to kidnapping, where we've personally dealt with incidents, not just in Singapore, but in the likes of Malaysia, where we've seen people being kidnapped and where the kidnappers actually ask for the ransom in Bitcoin. And so as cryptocurrencies become more and more popular, right, today, probably it's not just the criminals they're using. We're seeing a lot of the people in the retail side, the institution side. But as transactions volume pick up, naturally, criminal activity is also picking up. And in 2020, last year, it was estimated that more than $11 billion was involved in illicit cryptocurrency transactions, right? And so naturally then, banks and regulators start becoming more and more wary of cryptocurrency because of the increased money laundering risk that it poses, right? And so with that, well, as you can imagine, because of the risks that cryptocurrency poses, it's not that regulators and banks are against cryptocurrency, right? People always ask me, why do regulators regulate crypto? And I always reply, they're not regulating crypto. They're trying to regulate money laundering, right? And it's because of the risk of money laundering that crypto provides that they are forced to take action. And so last year can be said to be the year of cryptocurrency regulation, where we saw many different jurisdictions around the world Singapore included, introduce licensing frameworks for companies that want to deal with crypto. And as what was shared, Thailand has actually been one of the first companies as early as 2018. They already came up with a framework, right? I'm actually a little bit, ashamed to say that Singapore is actually lagging behind, where we only came up with a licensing framework early last year. And in fact, this entire process being so stringent, right? Although licensing applications actually opened early last year, until today, no company has gotten a license yet. Everybody is still going through the process, right? So I'll be very excited to see Zipmex probably being one of the first to get it, considering that they're so compliant, right? But the whole industry is just waiting to see, right, what's going to happen there. With these new laws and regulations, definitely we're then seeing the institutionalization of cryptocurrency, right? So just last year, you read about the likes of JP Morgan now opening bank account for, Coinbase and Gemini, right? For those of you who have been in the crypto space for a long time, one of the biggest challenges that crypto companies face for a long, long time is trying to get bank accounts, right? We want to offer crypto services. Our clients need to put in fiat, but the banks don't want to work with the crypto companies. And so, if you were one of the few exchanges with a bank account for the last couple of years, actually, that's already a very, very great accomplishment, right? Outside of that, we're also seeing national banks, right, enter the space. I do believe, Thailand is one of the first national banks that has already gone live with its CBDC, right? So it's very, very impressive, right? So we've definitely seen, these laws come in that is trying to create a safer environment for companies that want to deal in crypto, right? And that's where Merkle Science comes in. So Merkle Science, we do blockchain analytics, right? For those of you who don't really know much about the technical aspect of blockchain, all you need to know is that blockchain is a public database where anytime a transaction is conducted, that transaction is actually recorded and the entire industry can actually view that information. So what we do at Merkle Science, when we talk about blockchain analytics, what it means is that we analyze blockchain data, we track hacks, we track ransomware, we track sanctioned wallets, we track exchanges, right? And using that information, we've built a proprietary database of bad addresses and good addresses, which means that with the solution that we've designed, we can actually help our clients, right, identify if their clients are sending them funds from these illicit sources. So pretend you're an exchange, right? If you're an exchange, the law currently requires businesses that deal with cryptocurrencies to be able to identify where their clients' crypto is coming from, right? And so tapping onto the proprietary database that we have, we can actually tell our clients, hey, 2% of your clients are sending you funds from known gambling sites. 3% of your clients are sending you funds from darknet marketplaces. I think it's time for you to, take a closer look at those clients and investigate, right? So that's what we do. We look at the blockchain data, we analyze the information, and then we compile it into our tool, which help these companies comply. Now, one of the problems that regulators face then is that, well, this approach works. But in order for this approach to be effective, companies like us need to have a wide database of these criminal addresses. And unfortunately, something about crypto is that it's very easy for criminals to create new wallet addresses. And so one of the problems that the industry faces, well, is there a way for us to detect illicit activity and suspicious transactions when it's not coming from a known bad address, right? And recognizing this, a lot of the new literature that we see coming out is information for these cryptocurrency companies telling them, hey, it's not enough for you now to identify where the crypto is coming from. We want you to impose the same kind of transaction monitoring that banks have been using for the last couple of decades, right? We want you to have in place systems to detect when your client is transacting, in a suspicious manner, right? And so what we've done at Merkle Science is that we've built systems that can not only detect where funds are coming from, but even detect whenever your client is transacting in a suspicious manner. Now, moving on to, really the topic of institutionalization, it's great that we have all these solutions, but I can tell you honestly, the banks and the regulators, they are a bit far off from being well-versed in using this. And so the other thing that we've started pushing out lately is recognizing that these banks and regulators may not have the necessary expertise. We've started assisting them in conducting investigations as well as risk assessment, right? So one of the very interesting things that we do right now is that we have banks coming to us and say, hey, I want to onboard a cryptocurrency exchange, but I'm not sure if this cryptocurrency exchange really complies to the kind of AML standards that they say. Can you do an independent assessment for me? Right? And because all this information is available on the blockchain, we can actually come in and take a look at any exchange and actually verify if an exchange has really been adhering to the kind of AML and KYC standards that they supposedly say they comply with. Right? And so this is becoming very interesting because for the first time, these banks, these regulators are able to do independent audit assessments on these companies because of the transparent nature of cryptocurrencies. Now, question then becomes, right? Why is blockchain analytics important? So in an ideal world, people would care about blockchain analytics because they want to prevent money laundering. They want to deter criminal activity, right? But let's be honest. Most people don't really have this at the forefront, right? When you're running a business, what you care about is profit. What you care about is making money. And so to be very honest, most people only really care about blockchain analytics because regulation requires it. It's mandatory, right? And we've seen when licensing has been introduced in Thailand and Singapore, regulators are making this mandatory. And so this need is slowly growing. But aside from that, an interesting thing that I've found in the last couple of years working with Merkle Science is actually, even before cryptocurrencies were regulated, right? Even before there was a legislative need for blockchain analytics, there were actually a lot of companies who were opting to use it even before the law requires, because they found that it gave trust to their investors, to their partners, and to their clients, right? I've had exchanges come to me saying, hey, we need your help. And my first impression is, oh, are you in a jurisdiction where licensing requires it? And they're like, actually, no, I want to open a bank account. And my bank says, if I'm to deal business with them, I need to have blockchain analytics in place, because the bank doesn't want to lose its license by onboarding an exchange with money laundering risk. Right, we've seen the same with companies that want to work with payments providers, institutional clients. Right, there's no institutional financial institution who's going to put money on an exchange that doesn't comply with their AML requirements. And so, these are really the top 3 reasons why people have started looking at blockchain analytics, and I think it's very important for companies who want to deal with institutions, right, to be able to demonstrate to these institutions that, hey, we take compliance seriously. We don't want you to lose your license, and we want to gain our license, right? So hopefully, you guys found this presentation useful, right? For those of you who are interested to find out more about blockchain analytics and how it can help protect your business, feel free to let me know. But with that, I give the time back over to Maxime, and I'm keen to see if there's any questions from the audience.
Thanks a lot, Ian, and very great presentations. And for people who are not really familiar with your product, I think it was quite well explained. And I just have a few questions for you, especially, and maybe the first one, I'm not sure your reply, and I'm a bit afraid of the answer. But in your analytics, you are not doing it only in Singapore or Thailand. Where do you see most of the bad transactions happening? Can you say the country? Or?
I think it's a very tough question to answer, because we got to recognize that certain jurisdictions that just have way more transaction volume, right? Like the US, for example, has a ton of transaction volumes, right? But although they have high volumes, the frequency much lower, because countries like Indonesia just have more people, right? So globally, I'd say actually a lot of the illicit transaction flow to Asia, right? Unfortunately, I think if you look at how regulation has evolved, Asia has been typically a little bit slower to come up with its laws, whereas in the US, these crypto companies have been regulated as MSBs, traditional licenses, right? So they've already been taking their compliance very seriously, whereas Asia is slowly playing catch up. And so naturally, you see a lot of these illicit funds flowing to Asia, trying to be cashed out over here.
Okay, understood. Thanks for your
I
reply.
I have a question, Ian, and this is regarding, so because you work with financial institutions and crypto exchanges, how would you tackle with decentralized exchanges and the fund flow that's happening through those, because they're not getting detected? Is there a way to detect and to combat this?
Great question. So the challenge with decentralized exchanges is convincing them to adopt regulatory requirements, to adopt KYC, to adopt AML, right? And when I look at decentralized exchanges, I actually put them in the same camp as DeFi, right? Because essentially they're both just run by smart contracts, right? Now, the way that regulation has evolved is that most jurisdictions, I think as it stands, currently don't regulate DeFi, they don't regulate decentralized exchanges, right? Because it's just difficult to regulate them when you don't really know who controls it. It's not like you can impose sanctions over an entity, right? If it's a decentralized platform. But at the same time, I do feel that at least the last couple of months, we've seen another crypto wave, right? And this wave was actually spearheaded by the DeFi side of things. And unfortunately, I do feel that with the way that DeFi is progressing, it is attracting so much money, it's attracting so much attention that we're going to see regulators start imposing restrictions on it, right? Like I mentioned at the start, regulators, they don't regulate crypto, they regulate money laundering risk. Just like how when crypto has been around for 10 years, they only started paying attention in 2016, 17 when the ICO boom happened, right? And so there was a lot of risk. Okay, I got to pay attention. DeFi, I think, and decentralized exchanges, I think, is the same. Decentralized exchanges and actually DeFi have been around for more than 5 years, right? DEXs have been around, and projects that used to do stable coins, actually, technically, they are DeFi as well, right? It's collateralization and then getting stable coins. That has been around for a long time. But regulators didn't pay attention to it because there wasn't much risk, right? But now, with these DeFi projects pulling in billions of dollars, regulators can no longer ignore it, right? And when they start taking a closer look at DeFi, they're going to start taking a look at decentralized exchanges as well, because both of it basically acts as mixers for criminals to launder their funds.
But I mean, it's quite difficult, right? Because you're a decentralized exchange. You can pretty much, you don't have like a legal entity or anywhere, and it could just be some random guy in, I don't know, in Tanzania or something. Just you don't know where it is, like, and people provide liquidity and everything is on, on the blockchain, but there's no, how do I say this, like there's no responsible party here. So it's really hard, I mean, to regulate and enforce. Is that, is there a way?
So frankly speaking, most DeFi projects, I mean, all DeFi projects have to be built by somebody, right? Somebody has to build it. Now, there may not be a legal entity that's taking ownership, right? But somebody was the one that wrote the code, somebody is the one that published it, right? So to your point, yes, with no legal entity actually taking ownership, it's very difficult for regulators to then impose sanctions. Who are you going to jail? Right? Are you going to jail the person who created the code? But he can say, well, I just created the code, I put it out there. Other people's the one using it, right? You can't blame me for just writing something and putting it out there, right? I have my own freedom of speech. So I think what's going to happen is that we are going to see regulation clamp down on decentralized exchanges and DeFi projects by making it illegal, or such that companies in their jurisdictions are not allowed to receive funds from it. Right. So transaction monitoring companies like us, we have databases of DeFi projects, of decentralized exchanges, just like how we have database of ransomware and scams. Right. So if the country makes it illegal, that means that local exchanges, local businesses cannot receive funds from these decentralized platforms. Right. And hopefully that will be what drives down the use. But I'm with you. I don't think they can ever stop it. I think it's always going to be there. People are going to use it, right, regardless of whether it's legal or not. And yet. It's going to be interesting to see how the kind of approach they're taking with it. It's kind of like privacy coins, right? They can ban privacy coins, which means that you can stop exchanges from accepting it, but you can't shut it down.
Yeah.
Exactly. But thanks for that. It was a very great question. So, yeah. And as more and more people
I have one more question, but let's ask the audience at the moment. Like
there is a couple, and I received on private as well. I would try to ask them. So for Ian, maybe is there any substance to the criticism from privacy coin that Bitcoin is not truly fungible and the receipt of tainted Bitcoin can be potentially seized? So to explain it, to further explaining, if I own some Bitcoin that someone sent me and they went through a Ponzi scheme or a legal frame, whatever, is there a risk that I would be actually, my Bitcoin would be seized if I exchange it on Zipmex or somewhere else?
Very good question. I think, so this question is actually a little bit difficult to answer because I think different jurisdictions are going to take different approach to it, right? Just putting on my lawyer hat for a second, right? The law has this concept of bona fide buyer, right? That means if I purchase something in good faith and I don't know that it came from some kind of crime, then I shouldn't be penalized. You shouldn't be able to take it away from me because I paid good money for it, right? If I forked out $10,000 to buy stolen Bitcoin without knowing that it's stolen Bitcoin, who are you to take that $10,000 worth of Bitcoin away from me? Who's going to give me back my $10,000, right? Where it becomes challenging, right, is when you start drawing parallels of crypto with cash, right? You start drawing parallels. The thing about cash is that cash is fungible to a certain extent, and with Bitcoin, it's arguably non-fungible, right? We can actually tell every single Bitcoin who's held it, which is the Bitcoin that was involved in scams, and so on, right? But when Bitcoin changes hands, does the taint pass hands? I think that's the question that we need to tackle, right? And I think if somebody is buying it with no knowledge of the fact that it's coming from a criminal source, he paid good money for it, then the law shouldn't penalize this person by seizing it from him, right?
All right, yeah, makes sense. Makes sense. Otherwise, it's going to be a lot of problem for a lot of people. But thanks for your reply. And I have one for the chat, and then after we can go to Khun Bank. So Khun Akon, and sorry if I mispronounce your name. Merkle seems to be doing some good work, so congratulations. Yeah. And on top of just regulatory compliance, can your tool also be used for police investigation agency to track crime and nab criminals?
So short answer is yes. With the database and the analytics tools that we have, although in this presentation, I focus really more on the compliance side. Actually, we do have another solution that we sell especially to law enforcement, right? To assist them with the tracking and identifying of criminals. So for example, when the Twitter hack took place, right, it was through blockchain analytics that the hackers were actually caught in just 2 weeks because law enforcement could literally trace where these Twitter hackers were sending their funds, which are the exchanges that it went in, and then they worked with these exchanges to then identify who the criminals were. Yeah.
Okay. And Khun Bank, you wanted to ask something, right?
Yeah, can you help us trace the origin of the USDT and the threat tenant, like where it's actually coming from? Because I think I'd like to know that as well. Like it's, and if it's like, because what I'm kind of afraid at the moment is the origination and the source of every single USDT that's just getting printed. I mean, I don't know if you as a hobby,
I hold USDT.
I hold USDT too.
Really?
But I'm just. But like, because of this whole issue that they just print out USDT without, an actual amount backing them. Like, I know you can't look at the physical part, but the digital part, like, do they just mint it, correct? Or have you ever looked into it?
I've not looked into it personally, but it wouldn't be too hard actually. You would just have to find a smart contract that does the issuance, right? And then like track on the blockchain how many have been issued.
Yeah. Because I think a lot of people have been seeing these articles about USDT recently, and causing quite a bit of a panic and a scare in the market that it actually might not be real there's no real money backing it, or not nearly not enough for what it claims to be. So it'd be quite interesting to see with that data.
I think it will be, and the thing is that if it's not, and the castle is breaking down, I think it's going to be a tough time for all of us. But
it is definitely.
And yeah, Teresa, do you want to ask any questions to our host? I know you prepared some.
Yeah, I think I have some as well. Maybe let me ask Khun Bang first. As we know, like more and more people are looking for higher product, like so that's why people are like really loving to the DeFi platform. So to against with this situation, more and more centralized exchange like Binance and Huobi, and also they are actually picking some structured product. So with DeFi and fixed income features, so to keep their users fund to stay into the exchange. So I'm not sure, like in Zipmex, do you meet any problem like this? Like people always like buy from Taiba to Zipmex, then they withdraw to DeFi platform. So I mean, like, do you meet any situation like this? And if yes, do you have any plan for this? Thank
I can
you.
answer. Even I do that. even
Okay.
putting buy and then I do some sort of DeFi farming, yield farming or something on Sushi Swap unit. So I used to do that as well. And you know, the thing of what we're trying to do at Zipmex is we're trying to introduce digital assets to the mainstream audience. And mainstream audience, they're used to typical banking products. They're used to, you know, the you know, putting your money in, you earn some yield, earn some saving, buy some bonds, things like that. But then when you introduce the whole concept of DeFi for them, okay, you definitely get better yield and better return. But then you tell them, oh, you got to transfer to here, and then you got to stake, and then you have to get a MetaMask account or trust. They go, oh, no, forget it. Like it's it's just too much. And especially if you have a lot of money, you've got like, you know, $2 million or something like that. Let's say for a high net worth customer, to expose them towards DeFi is way too risky, like definitely too risky for them. So what we try to do is we try to translate these complicated and complex products into a very easy to understand. So, you know, for Zipmex Singapore and Zipmex Indonesia, what we have is Zip Up. So, you know, customers put, you know, their Bitcoin, their Ethereum, USDT with us. So we give out about 6% on Bitcoin, 6% Ethereum, about 10% on USDT. And what Zipmex Singapore and Indonesia does is we work with institutional lending companies. BitGo has them, BlockFi also does that. So we work with them, and they will, you know, lend out these assets and provide a yield to us, which we in turn give it back to the customers. So what we work is a B2B platform. We don't really take customers' money and put it into some sort of like Sushi Swap or something like that. It's just way too risky for our customers. And you know, the response to your question is that yes, like we do want to bring the experience of, you know, that we as crypto traders, like we're pretty used to it, but the normal, you know, average investor who's just heard about Bitcoin and wants exposure into the market, they don't know how to enter the DeFi space. We have to translate it for them, make it easier for them, and we build our products in order for them to be able to access and use these products very easily, like at like a few clicks, like 1 or 2 clicks, and you are able to have access to these, you know, products that is pretty much like DeFi. Yeah. So we want to bridge. What we do at Zipmex all the time is to provide that bridge to a traditional finance and digital finance.
And follow up on this one very quickly.
Gotcha.
Oh, sorry, Tears. Following up on this one, you know, now Binance is offering options, margin trading, and so on. In Thailand, does the SEC allows you to offer those kind of product yet or not?
Not yet. Not yet. But it's something that I have discussed with them.
Okay.
Definitely, because, you know, futures trading, margin trading, leverage trading, all these sort of things, even leverage products where you buy a coin which has already been leveraged itself, they still don't get that concept. So it's gonna take some time, but I can safely say that it's coming. Yes.
Okay. I have questions on the chat on direct message. Question for Khun Bank. Are there any services offered by Zipmex yet to manage the tax obligations for Thailand's with trade made on your platform? Has there been any clear interpretation on what constitutes a taxable event here in Thailand?
So tax in Thailand is always self-reporting.
Yeah.
So you basically report what you gain, and we actually provide all the transaction details of every single customer, and then they can download it on their account and on the platform. And what they can do is they can just calculate. Now, whether we have a service to calculate the tax for them yet, we don't. It's a feature that many customers have asked for, and but it's something that I'm also planning to. It's not very difficult. It's just a simple calculator process where we do it for the customer. However, because tax is self-reporting, however, the enforcement of the tax law regarding capital gains on crypto has not been executed or enforced yet. I haven't heard of any case where a customer has, the revenue department is knocking on the doors of the customer to pay up your tax. That hasn't happened yet, but doesn't mean that the law isn't there. The law is there, but it just hasn't been enforced.
Okay, yeah, indeed. And so I have a question for both of you about institution adoptions. And back in 2016, I remember everybody was saying, oh, Bitcoin will explode the day there will be an ETF available for people. Well, it's not existing yet today in the US, and Bitcoin is still going up. So I would like to have your opinions. What are the missing piece of regulations or new products that will bring crypto adoption to mass market? Will it be more regulation? Will it be an ETF? Would it be a central bank digital currency? Can you give your views on this, both Bank and
I'll let Ian go first.
Sure. So I think, for there to be institutional adoption, one, education is important, right? People need to at least have some kind of basic idea of what they're buying into. And then on top of that, then, once they understand it, I think it's really about risk mitigation, right? And I mean that from a couple of different perspectives, right? If I'm an institutional player that wants to buy crypto, right? Question is there a place that I can buy it safely, right? Because I'm answerable to my, my investors. I'm answerable if I'm a licensed entity to my regulators. So they're going to want to know everything that I'm putting my money into, right? Is there a place for me to buy it safely? If I can buy it safely, right? Is there then a place for me to store it safely, right? Do I have the necessary expertise to keep it myself? Probably not. So you want to use a custody provider. But then the question is it safe to put it with the custody provider? Are they regulated, right? You got to always put yourself in the shoe of these institutions, right? For them, it's all about liability. If anything goes wrong, am I protected to say, okay, I bought it from a regulated exchange. Okay, I stored it with a regulated custodian. So if something goes wrong, it's not my fault. I've done everything that the law said I should do, right? And then alongside that, of course, it would be things like insurance, right? For the longest time, I think a lot of these custody solution providers, they say, okay, we have custody, but then they didn't have insurance, which means that if something went wrong again, who's going to take the blame? Who's going to take the fall, right? And I think increasingly we're seeing all these missing pieces come in, right? We're seeing regulation come in to introduce licensing frameworks for crypto businesses, for exchanges. We're seeing laws come in on the anti-money laundering side, and then providers like ourselves and some of our competitors coming in to help on the AML side. We're seeing insurance companies come in, right? I think there's a number of different insurance providers like Lloyd's, right, who's now insuring a lot of the top custody providers. And so all this has given a lot of confidence for institutional players to now be able to say, okay, I'm coming in, I have these regulated entities I can deal with, my clients' assets are all protected, right? The only exposure to risk I have now is the cryptocurrency market price itself, right? And as managers, they should be able to manage that risk. So I think we're getting there. All the pieces are in place already. The only thing probably still missing, I think, is the audit part of things. And when I talk about audit, I mean technology audit, right?
Sure.
Auditing of smart contracts, for example,
Right.
right? So many cryptocurrencies out there today being traded on exchanges, and a lot of these cryptocurrencies are controlled by smart contracts. Your DeFi platforms are all controlled by smart contracts. Who's really paying attention to these smart contracts?
Okay,
Maxime will say Atato.
Yes,
is the
Yes.
we have been delivering those smart contract audits for people who actually wanted to produce a report for the SEC. So yeah, the service exists and is available in Thailand.
Okay.
Thank you for
very good. Selling your product.
Yes,
that is the missing piece when right?
You are the missing piece.
Yes, you are the missing piece.
What a responsibility! What a responsibility! Khun Bank, if I can have your view.
Actually, Ian was saying the same. I wrote down everything that he was saying, like custodian, insurance, and the audit, especially. For me, it's not only tech audit, like financial audits as well. It's quite important. But all the big four firms, you got PricewaterhouseCoopers, Ernst & Young, Deloitte, because they're big four, but they still don't know much about this space. I mean, they're learning. But I can safely say that all of this was not here 4 years ago. We've moved quite fast, and the infrastructure is being built, the regulation is there, and it's still going to be improving and changing more and more, which is, it goes back to your first point, your question is the institution adoption. Everything is in place for institution adoption to start to happen now. Money is being stored safely. There's now insurance companies. You can now audit it. I agree with Ian about the tech audit part. There's not a lot of talent and companies like out there offering these sort of services, like Atato is doing. I believe there'll be more coming. I think it's simply because they're quite expensive. But it's it's not an easy job doing a blockchain audit. Like, it's not an easy job. It's quite difficult. So but I'm sure with the right demand, you guys coming into the market, like, yeah, we're gonna see a lot more adoption taking place.
Okay, and Teresa, I would ask you, but just to come back on the cost of the audit, not because it's a part of a business, is actually the people who are able to do that are not many. So that's why it's expensive, is because it's a very particular jobs that needs talent. And Teresa, you had the questions, I think.
Maybe I have a question for all of you three. Yeah, maybe just curious about your future plans. Maybe you guys can work with us about you guys are doing. What is the, short milestone you guys want to achieve? And also, like, in 2021, what you guys are focused on? Like, other than the future you are thinking about for the the auditing and also the custody, but focus on your main business. What is you are currently doing right now, and what you guys are going to do in 2021? Thanks. Maybe start from Ian.
Sure. Yeah, so 2021 is going to be very exciting for us. We're actually in the middle of a fundraising round right now, right, which we're going to be closing within a month. So with that, we're going to be taking the money and then expanding more aggressively to the US and the UK markets, right? Setting up operations there, offices over there. On top of that, in terms of the inside the blockchain space, so we're actually seeing a lot of interest now for our services, not just from the institutions, but from the government sector, right? So, with regulators introducing licensing frameworks, they need tools to monitor the companies that are, applying for a license. Law enforcement need tools in order to investigate and increase crypto crime. So, actually, it's pretty exciting, the fact that just last quarter, we were contacted by 6 different law enforcement agencies, right, out of the blue, saying, hey, there's now a need for us to talk to you because crime rate in our jurisdictions have been increasing, right? And we just need, they need the expertise, in order to handle those cases.
Gotcha. And how about Khun Bank?
So, as in the exchange business, my destiny and fate is heavily correlated against the price of Bitcoin. But I do believe, because of digital assets, it's emerging. I don't believe that just buying and selling is the only part of the business. What we aim to become is like a digital bank, a digital asset like Bank of Asia. So there are other products. There are savings product as well. We're working on a payments as well. So having cards of our own, and we're also working in terms of the lending side, like peer-to-peer lending. So what we want to provide is this like one-stop shop, one-stop service for digital assets. And that, with a Zipmex account, you can do a variety of things as well. And, the last thing, which is very important to our business, and is what I try to instill every day, is that we, of course, definitely, we always want to be number one in the market, have the most volume and things like that. But I'm not willing to sacrifice security and customer experience, for volume. I'm not going to go out there and chase, volume and getting customers on board. But what we need to do is provide a secure and easy to use platform first. So for Zipmex, like, security is always number one, because we're a financial institution. And if you're a finance institution, trust is very important. And trust cannot be bought. It has to be earned through time and reputation. And with crypto, especially, if you're attacked or hacked once, you're pretty much like gone. That trust is gone. So that's why I place security in terms of our tech and our platform very, very high. And because we are regulated and licensed, we have created this culture of compliance in the business, that we try to comply and we try to abide by the rules, not only to protect us, but to protect the customer, as well as the industry in the markets that we're operating in.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Thanks
and I
for
think
sharing. And how about next?
Go ahead.
Do you want to share?
No, I would say
to do more meetups.
no.
Yeah.
To you, I was going on Khun Bank, yes, on security, and yeah, there has been some recent news in Thailand for some exchanges issues. So I believe this is one of the biggest concern from consumer. But I have a question on the chat actually for you, Khun Bank. Ben is asking, are there Thai companies are using Zipmex account wallet to receive product services payments already, or is it mainly used to hold Bitcoin and digital assets?
We're working on something, and I've already announced it, I think, but it's going to be launched out soon. We're working with the largest movie chain, major Cineplex in Thailand, so that customers can buy movie tickets using cryptocurrencies and digital assets. I previously announced this, I think, in December or November last year. But yeah, we're rolling that out for payments as well. So yeah, you can now basically pay with your cryptocurrency. And Zipmex is also working, gonna be issuing out its own card, so you can use your USDT or Bitcoin to pay for things as well. And this also aligns with a lot of other things. If you have a lot of like assets, in your account, we can provide things like free health insurance for a year, which we're working with the health insurance company for. So we're trying to provide this real offline like physical experiences that that is part of the digital experience as well. So it's something that normal people can relate to. So this is the kind of thing that we're also trying to push out. Okay,
thanks a lot, and you're very exciting. And I have a question for both of you. We discussed a bit about it during your presentation, Khun Bank, but when we are talking about institution, we often refer to banks. As you mentioned, it was very difficult some years ago to receive a bank account when you were a digital asset business. Now you see, I mean, in Singapore, DBS is launching an exchange. In Thailand, we have SCB, KBTG, and others investing in that space as well. How do you see the banks fitting in this whole like digital asset economy in the next few years?
Ian, you wanna?
Yeah, the banks are going to disappear, and now everybody is going into crypto. Or it is more nuanced.
So I think we are seeing the banks come in from a few different ways, right? One is, of course, the bank wanting to get in on the action themselves, right? So in terms of launching their own CBDC or using blockchain for things like trade finance. We're also seeing that I think banks can no longer ignore the wealth that crypto companies have, right? And so we're seeing banks now open bank accounts, right, for your exchanges, for your custodians, for your providers, right? I don't think we'll ever see a day where we get rid of banks. And I say that because, banks play a very important role, right? They play a very important role in safeguarding our financial systems because, the regulatory compliance side are imposed on them, right? They make sure that transactions are conducted safely. But on top of that, I think, as much as the creators of Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are all about control, a lot of us actually don't really care about control. I think there's a lot of people who are happy to put their money with someone else, let someone else manage it. If they lose their password, they can call someone on the hotline and have that person, recover their account, right? And so I think because of all that, we're not going to see banks go away. And then the other thing as well is that although DeFi is becoming more and more popular, DeFi is still limited in terms of what kind of financial products they can offer, right? It still relies heavily on over collateralization, right? You can't take out more than you actually have, right? And so, banks again play a very important role in, giving clients risk score, credit rating, allowing them to take loans over and above what kind of assets they have, right? So I think it's going to be a while, but as much as we'll see, the services that banks slowly being phased out, I doubt there will come a day where we'll get rid of them entirely.
Okay, thanks a lot for your reply.
Yeah, for me, I'll just say from personal experiences that, when we were launched Activate in Thailand, no banks came to ever see me. But this past New Year, they all came with basket of fruits and oranges and stuff. And like, what's going on? Like, you've been ignoring me for like years. And now they're like coming in and like, oh, Happy New Year. Oh, let's work together. Who do you bank with? And stuff. Because we're getting a lot of more, customers like Thai baht and Indonesia rupiah and Singapore dollars. So you're definitely beginning to see banks coming in and not even just wanting to work with us. They want to get into the space. And I can say for Thailand that is currently, being discussed as well. So it is happening.
Okay, that's a complete shift compared to some years ago. So it's very nice to see.
Shift. Yeah.
And
yes.
As
before
we can
they
see,
use, I was doing an illegal business, but now it's, oh no, it's very legal. We saw you live last week. Oh, okay, thank you. So nice. But they never saw the one I did a year ago or something.
And at Toto, working with some of those financial institutions, why we see them coming as well, I think there has been a lot of pressure from their customer to have new class of assets instead of the boring bonds that you were explaining at the beginning. But also from high net worth individual who wanted to go into the space and asking their banks why they can't provide such a product yet. So yes, I think it's a pressure from their customers as well to go into that space because they need to provide new products and novelty to their customer. But it's very nice to see, and especially in Thailand. So we are almost there. So I will take a question from the chat if there is anybody. And there is a question from Fantake, if I pronounce your word correctly. I'm quite confident about blockchain, cryptocurrency, or Bitcoin. I think it's been a long time since the idea of decentralization, so it doesn't really matter if it's illegal or risk. Do I understand it right? Illegal or risk? I'm not sure I get your question. And
yeah, I'm not sure I get the question.
I think I get it.
Mind rephrasing? Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I think it's just basically this whole talk of decentralization, about being Bitcoin is being decentralized, and no one has really talked about that because it's now in the limelight. Institution adoption is kind of centralized. There are two worlds which are happening in crypto. One is a centralized world, one is a decentralized world. It's happening, and which is what I also believe to be the same with CBDC, which is central bank digital currencies. You're going to get like a digital dollar or digital yuan or digital Thai baht. those will be centralized and controlled. But then you also have this decentralized world where Bitcoin can still be traded on decentralized exchanges. It can still operate illegally, much the same as with cash. Some cash you can't trace. If you have it in a briefcase for illegal transactions, you can still use cash. And this will continue to persist in the world. There'll always be as centralized and over above the table and under the table for every single thing. But the question of whether does it matter if it's illegal risk or not? Now there's 2 points. Is it illegal? Not really anymore. A lot of countries have accepted Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies. How they regulate it depends on each market. Now about risk, it's still a highly volatile asset. It's highly volatile simply because there is not a lot of dissemination into the, even though people think Bitcoin is quite decentralized, there are still, like we call them whales. There are still a lot of whales out there who can move the market, and they can drop the market by 10, 20% in a matter of an hour if they chose to. So it's not that fully decentralized yet, but I do believe with time and a lot more of the dissemination and more wallets being created for Bitcoin, it will become a much more stable asset.
Okay, thanks a lot. And I think a fan of Merkle Science on the chat directly to me say, is Merkle planning to become a public company? Sounds like a solid investment to get it on. So did you pay someone, Ian, to ask this question?
And you're currently fundraising, right?
I'm so curious who it is now. We are not going to go public anytime.
Okay, all right. So,
but thank you for your interest.
It's not from me, I assure you. And now I have, so it's almost over. And before I thank you all, I have a question that normally I never ask because we try not to focus on price of cryptocurrency and so on. And but we are talking about crypto and institutions in view of what we have seen in let's say December, January. For us who have been in this space for many years, we have seen 2013, we have seen 2017 with those kind of bubble. Do you feel that this one is different because of the institution, or it is just some media stories that institutions are getting in, that's why the price is going up? So I would like to have just your view on 2021. Is this rise of crypto is about different of what we have seen during those past few years? Jan, you want to start?
Yeah.
Come back.
Okay. So if you look at the market cycle of Bitcoin, we're in after the third halving, and every single halving, and there's always been a bull run. Now, the history doesn't mean that it's going to repeat itself. But the first wave, Bitcoin went up to $1,000, and then it dropped back down by, I would say, 85%. After the second halving, it went up to 20,000, and it dropped back down to 3,000, 4,000. Now, whether this time is any different, I can't predict it. However, there is always market psychology. There is always demand and supply, and too much demand and little supply. And there will always be people who take profit. And once the trend starts to reverse, that, okay, not many people are buying anymore, people are starting to sell, it will start to have a snowball effect, and people will sell. And then that's where we enter into a bear market. So in every single thing, even in business, you have a business cycle. And even in the market, you have a bull market and a bear market, not just for cryptocurrency, for stocks as well. Gold, even commodities such as gold, has decades-long bear market. So it always happens because we are operating in a market. So therefore, mass market psychology applies. That when Warren Buffett used to say, if your taxi driver is asking, about Bitcoin to buy, that's when you get out. It's simply because it's become too mass now, and then the normal retail, like not savvy investor, is getting into it. It means that the smart money is probably exiting. So what I've noticed a lot, especially last run, was that when a lot of people start cheering Bitcoin, and you see all these news media and CNBC, CNN saying it's good, that may be an indicator that we're entering into a parabolic phase. That the graph just keeps on going up. And look, it doesn't hurt to hold cash. Like in the end, if you get sick and you go to hospital, you can't pay with Bitcoin. So, try to take profit. And especially if I always tell my customers, if you make a lot of money in crypto, and let's say you double your profit, let's say you started off with 10,000, you made 20,000, take out your cost, take out your 10,000 and you can trade with the profits. At least you didn't lose the money that you worked hard for. And then you don't, have, at least, you have some that you save back and take profit as well. So that's, what I would like to tell everyone.
Okay.
Ian?
Okay, thanks. Ian?
So first thing I like to say is that I'm a horrible trader. Probably one of the few that consistently loses money on the market. So you definitely don't want to be relying too much on my advice. But what I will say is that I think, like what Bank says is correct. Market always go through cycles, right? So regardless of whether you're bullish, you got to recognize that there are forces at play that no asset is going to continuously rise consistently, right? Everything goes through cycles, and that's because it's humans that trade it, and we have our own, psychology that factors in. I do think that this bull run is slightly different because we are seeing more institutional come in, and when they buy large amounts, right? And they hold it, right? They literally hold it inside a cold storage vault, all that, which means they're also taking more Bitcoin out of circulation, right? Which means that, well, scarcity drives demand. So because of that, chances are price wouldn't crash the likes of what it did previously, right? I don't think, and don't quote me on this, right? I don't think we'll see sub 20 anymore, right? Although personally, I wish we would, then I can basically buy more Bitcoin. But I don't think we will, right? I think.
Yeah, I agree as well. I don't think we're going to go sub 20.
Yeah. I think we might still break 30, and we have, right? We a couple of weeks ago, we dipped below 30, but I think 30 is going to be somewhere on the safe bottom. And so yeah,
this meetup is recorded, so we will
well, how about this?
it.
MicroStrategy just bought more Bitcoin around the 30K mark. Like they just bought it very recently. So it's you got to look at these indicators as well.
Yeah.
Like these sort of things, like if you don't follow your, okay, why don't you just follow MicroStrategy, who just bought at 30K?
And I think with these institutions, because they have so much exposure, they are incentivized to prop up the price as well, right? They can't afford to let it fall too low. They just buy more, bring it up, or convince their partners to buy more. So I think we'll see more of a stable bottom, right? Which is kind of where we are. And yeah, I'm pretty bullish, but like I said, everything goes through cycles, right? And eventually I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere in the middle of this year we see a crash. Yeah, okay. Before it goes back.
Another thing to add, if no one knows, is that Ethereum is listing its futures. So Ethereum futures will be listed on the Chicago Mercantile Exchange, which is CME, on the 8th of February. So it just goes to show that, normal retail investors who trade the traditional markets now have exposure to Ethereum futures, which is coming on the 8th of Feb. So, if that's not an indication of, market adoption, then I don't know what is.
Okay, yeah, indeed. And just a question very quickly on Michael has one on the chat. It's quite long, but basically summarize the difference between the US and the Thai regulator. And do you have a program to proactively educate regulator here? I would say, and I think Khun Bank can say the same, so that the SEC or the Bank of Thailand or even the Stock Exchange of Thailand are actually quite well educated on blockchain and cryptocurrencies. They have been for many years, and they keep on actually educating themselves much faster than other countries. That's why we have seen actually some regulation that early in Thailand. And they are definitely looking at the space and educating themselves, if it's the question. I think Khun Bank, you can say the same, right?
They are still learning. They're learning fast. What they're lacking at the moment is people. And that, more people, more talent is getting attracted towards the private sector part rather than the regulation part. I can tell you right now, the SEC is heavily overworked. They're probably still in the office right now working, because there's just, especially with the case of one of the competitors crashing, they're basically working hard on that and trying to find out what's wrong. It's regulators will always play a catch up to innovation. It's just the way it is. And it's something that, we're going to continue to see a lot of innovation happening into the space and regulators playing catch up. But of course, the first point of entrance and exit for cryptocurrency is the exchange, especially the fiat exchange. And they do control that. So Zipmex is quite tightly regulated as well. And I do feel that, with more licenses coming out, they're going to have another license coming out now regarding custodians.
Yeah.
Right. So that just goes to show, I think it's one of the first licenses in the world, like to be to allow you to be a licensed custodian. So, Thailand is still very, Singapore as well.
Yep.
Okay.
They've just expanded the Payment Services Act to include custodians.
Okay. Recently?
Recently. Yeah.
Okay.
So we're still behind you probably. Yeah. But we're closing the gap.
Okay. You just made my job harder, Ian. Thank you. Now I have to go apply for that as well. But we are definitely beginning to see, like, the regulation, like, slowly, catching up. But they will always play a catch up.
Sure. And well, I think it is the word of the end. I would like very much to thank you all for joining, especially our presenters. I mean, if you want to, if you have a digital asset business, you would like to have a great tool to track your coins, get in contact with Ian. Definitely, his contacts you can find him on LinkedIn everywhere. And yes, as a company, we have an account on Zipmex. So
you do?
please,
okay.
Yeah, we do. And
let me go check how many.
Yeah, we just registered, and so
1,000.
don't say it loud. And
yeah,
really?
Go ahead. I was lying. I don't even know.
And thank you so much, Zipmex Crypto Exchange, Merkle Science, Analytics for Cryptocurrencies. So thank you all again for joining. Next month, it's going to be face-to-face, hopefully, if the COVID situation is okay. And then we can offer you some pizzas and beers to everybody who can join. So thanks again for your time. I wish you all a very good evening. Thank you, Khun. Thank you, Ian. Thank you, Teresa, as well.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.